Welcome to Icons of the Dragon Ball community, where I talk to very important people in all aspects of the fandom, whether it be actual, production people, whether it be people who worked on the series, or just people who have had an influence, a positive influence on Dragon Ball. And joining me today, a man who really his reach goes beyond Dragon Ball. He's been on Escaflowne, Inuyasha, various Gundam shows, Transformers, My Little Pony, G.I. Joe, but perhaps is most well known as the original English language voice for Vegeta, the original man behind It's Over 9,000, the biggest meme in our community. Please welcome Brian Drummond. Hello, sir.
Hey everybody, how you doing? So excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm very happy to talk to you, man. Like I was telling you before we recorded, I heard your voice when I was really little on Mega Man, and then when Dragon Ball started in '96, I believe is when Dragon Ball Z actually began. I think you
Yeah.
said you recorded in '95. It's become an addiction to a lot of us.
Oh yeah. It was a big part of many a child's life growing up in North America through the mid '90s and all the way through to right now. Everybody's still pretty pumped about that series. There's some crazy stuff that came out of doing that show over the many years and the hundreds of episodes that we've done.
Yeah, 291 and then some, because who knows what else is coming.
Absolutely.
Now, I wanted to get the elephant out of the room, out of the way here, and I want to talk about Over 9,000 because every time I go to a convention, I went to MegaCon the other about a couple months ago, and Ryo Horikawa was there, the original Japanese Vegeta, and so was Saban. He had an Over 9,000 shirt, and everybody just loves the Over 9,000. Ronda
Yeah.
Rousey wore it.
Yeah.
Right, and this is all yours. Like it was your voice.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It was.
Yeah. Can
Yeah,
you?
that was what, and at the time, you don't even know. It's just another line when we're doing it. So it's turned into something crazy, via a YouTuber or, who put it into a pretty crazy mashup, and away it went from there.
Can you believe just how massive it is? Like there's shirts, there's merchandise. It's just, and I just it's mind blowing. And then the ironic thing about it is it's actually a dub change.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, we nobody. I think when it was written into the script as over 9,000, and that's just whoever was doing the work on the script at the time and the translations put over 9,000. Maybe they just thought, 9,000 sounds better than 8,000. Who knows why? It's supposed to be over 8,000, and we read it as over 9,000. I never knew it was supposed to be anything different. You only see one script, and I don't speak Japanese, so I wasn't reading any original dialogue to say anything different. But that's the way we did it, and it's I look at it and I cringe when I watch it myself because it's such a bizarre read of a line. And I only remember at the time, and this was like this for tons of lines. When you do Japanese animation, there's such goofy mouth flaps to try and fit sometimes, and you just got to keep plowing through. We got a lot of dialogue to get through. That's just another one of them. And it's over 9,000. Just didn't seem to fit right. I remember Carl, our director, was saying, "Well, no, Brian, it's you got to watch the flaps. You got to hold it out a little bit longer because he kind of holds his mouth open for a bit." I'm like, "Oh, okay," because I'd rather wanted to have just said it, like, "What? It's over 9,000." Nice and quick, and I can't like unbelieve it, unbelievable. But he said it's got to be longer. It's over 9,000. No, Brian, actually, it's got to be a little bit longer. So then you get to the point where you just kind of scream it out, and it's over 9,000. And there it is. And then, okay, moving on. We got it. That fit the flaps. Next line, Brian, and away you go, right? So,
That's
and there it is. You forget about it till 5, 6, 7 years later, till someone's creating a crazy YouTube meme, and someone says to me, "You see this thing that's on the internet?" And I'm like, "No. Isn't this your voice?" I'm like, "Yeah. This thing's going crazy. My God, why?"
like 12 years. Like it was like 12 years after you did it, something like
Yeah,
that.
actually, yeah, from when I did it, yeah, you're right. Not from necessarily when it aired, but from when I did it, it was probably 10, 12 years later, wasn't it? Was it 2004 or something, or what? I don't even.
It was like, oh yeah, like 05, 06, right around there. It was early YouTube, like 06.
Oh, six. So yeah, you're right. So that was, yeah, that would have been probably after I did that line, like 11 years later at least. That's crazy.
It's crazy. And it's funny because to me, I think the underrated line is "You won't escape my wrath," because that's another one where you really stretched the "You won't escape my wrath," and you kept
Yeah.
that line. That's one of my favorites. That's one of my favorites.
Yeah, it was pretty early on, like very early in my career too. So I was not, I was, you're eager to please as a newer performer doing something that I was really excited about and I wanted to do more of it. So I remember I was really pushing my voice hard and just, going to the depths of screaming with every piece of dialogue. I lost my voice one day when early on in the series when we had really long days. They don't do them even that long anymore because of this series. We could go up to 8 hour days and they won't do that anymore. Maximum now is a 4 hour day. And I lost my voice but I would just scream my guts out for that role. And when, for a lot of people who saw some of that early stuff, they were like, man, that guy was just nuts. And I was like, well, I was pushing it pretty hard at the time. And now, as I'm trying to, look after and take care of my larynx a little bit more. And as you get older, you really want to look after things and not create, any more damage than I've already done. So I probably would, if I was throwing that role right now, there's no way I would probably push it as hard as I did then, just for the fact that I knew what a toll it would take on my voice.
Well, what kind of tips would you be able to offer up to somebody who wants to do this, just real quick, to kind of conserve their voice? Is there a secret behind what you do? Do you have a specific drink? I've heard tea. I've heard several different things from different people. Is there a trick to kind of saving your voice?
You know what? With screaming, there's no trick. It's just one of the things, any vocal coach, singing coaches, voice coaches, they would generally say just don't do it. Right? If you can get away with not screaming and yelling, like there's, or you go to a football game, basketball game, hockey game, whatever, and you scream just for a couple hours. You come home, or you go to a party for a few hours and try and talk loud and yell into someone's ear. You come home and you got no voice left. But if you have to do that 3, 4, 5 days a week, forget it. Like it's just not going to be there. And there's not a lot you can do besides not doing it is the best thing. But if you have to do it, you have to make sure your voice is a little bit warmed up before. So you just do any kind of general vocal warm ups that are going to be easy on your vocal cords, and you got to keep your vocal cords lubricated. So all I would be doing is just drinking tons of water or tea if I needed it. And if you've ever had, you could ever had some kind of a throat lubricant some people use, but I'm generally just lubricating with water and tea or something warm if it gets sore, and if I needed some kind of a throat medication if it gets really sore. But lubrication is the best thing, especially if you got to yell and yell and yell for 4 hours. That's about all you can do, and then and then rest. If you have a chance to rest the next day, that's great. If I ever have to do a video game and yell my guts out or something, which I try and avoid getting too many of those things because they're really hard in your throat, I'll try and have my agent make sure like book them for a Friday or a Friday afternoon. If I, not at the beginning of the week, but book them at the end of the week. That way I have like a Saturday and Sunday to recuperate and rest my voice, and I can be back to sort of working order on the Monday. But if I yell and scream on a Monday afternoon and I got to play some high pitched, little crazy character Tuesday morning, I'm hooped. It's going to be shot and not sound right. So it's a bit of a delicate balance trying to get that performance, but also take care of yourself.
I always tell everybody nothing in life is easy, man. It requires work.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of people have great voices and could do great things with them, but it's a dog eat dog world. You got to work hard, and you constantly training yourself to find new ways to compete and new ways to create things that are interesting and creative voices and different sounds and accents and ranges and rasp or no rasp or different things to you're just constantly trying to figure out how to do something better and more interesting, even just to challenge yourself.
Did you always want to do this? Is this something you always wanted to do, or did you have different dreams when you were younger, as far as career goes?
No, yeah, well, I fell into acting kind of in grade 10 in high school. I took a drama course. I didn't really know what I was going to do. I wanted to make money like everybody does, and I didn't really know how I was going to do it. But I took a drama course in high school in grade 10. I really loved the teacher, and I thought, man, this is fun. And I didn't even really think about, oh, I could get paid to do this. And surprisingly, our high school, which was grade 11 and 12, it was separate from the junior high, which was grade 8 through 10. I was going to take drama right away in the high school, and they dropped the program. It was they didn't have enough people that wanted to take it. It was a pretty small high school in a small town, and they dropped drama, and I think because of cutbacks. No drama in grade 11 or 12, so I couldn't even take it. Took band and a bunch of other interesting things and art and some stuff that I was interested in, but had kind of forgotten about acting being an option. Until I got out of high school, I graduated, and a buddy of mine had a friend in an amateur theater production of something in the small town I grew up in, Salmon Arm, British Columbia, which is probably about 4 hours out of Vancouver. And he wanted to know if I wanted to be in this show with this amateur production over the summer, and I ended up getting a part in it and loved it, absolutely loved it. Went on to do another show with those guys, and then one of the directors said, "You should audition for this great theater school called Studio 58 in Vancouver, which is one of the top theater conservatory style theater programs in all of Canada." And I have no idea how, but out of probably, 300-400 applicants, they picked 16 of us, and I got in. And I learned, sort of the base foundation of acting at that program, and wanted to go on doing film and TV and stage work. And in between dry spells of that kind of work, you take whatever you can get. When you're not doing theater, you try and do some film. When you're not doing film, you fill in the gaps. And I heard about some of these voice shows that were coming to town, and people were doing voice stuff, and I didn't know much about it at all. And I tried out for my first gig on a show called Reboot, and I didn't get the role. They were recasting one of the leads, Bob, and I didn't get the role when they recast it, but I did get on the very next show that I went out for, which was a show called G.I. Joe Extreme.
Yeah.
And that was directed by Sue Blue, great director out of LA who directed tons of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and a pile of stuff. So I just fell into it with a big gig right out of the gate and loved what I was doing. And I was like, man, if I could find a way to do this all the time. And sure enough, over the course of a few years, it just built and built until it became my full-time career shortly into the late 90s and early 2000s.
I remember you mentioned in an interview that when you had first started doing this, you only had one kid, right? And now you have three, but back then you had one.
Yeah.
Now, I wanted to bring some like that up because I remember you had mentioned previously that the reason why you did voice versus doing actual on-screen stuff was because the schedules were easier for your family. Because I remember you said in an interview that if you're on a TV show or a film or whatever, you have to be there no matter what. Unless you're a super huge, celebrity actor, sometimes it's like 12 hours. Whereas with voice, like you said, there's the limitations now. So that's all correct in the sense that that's why you decided to do voice over everything else.
That's a big part of it. I mean, part of it is that I loved doing it. Like you walk into something and going, and I was like, this pays phenomenally. This group of people are, they are so cool. Like you end up in a room with just some really great performers, and I love the people. I loved the work. The money was fantastic, and then the hours all of a sudden were great because they're generally only scheduled between 9 and 6, 5 days a week, not on the weekends, not late at night. And if for some reason you're sick or there's an issue or you can't get in, for some strange reason, you can pick up your part on another day. I mean, you can't do that on a TV series. You're not feeling that well. You're going to have to be really sick before they're changing, the entire production schedule around you, unless you are a big part of the show, like a big lead in it. If you have a few days and you're a guest guy and for some reason you're going to miss a day, or you're not going to make it into day one, they might recast you. Or, they're going to drag you in and, and hope that you feel good enough to make your way through the day. But I just there were so many different aspects of it that I loved that I started putting more and more time and effort into it and pursuing it, harder than the other avenues of film and TV and theater.
Yeah, it just seems like a lot of fun. It really does. It's
just a blast. We we laugh. I'm still, 25 years into it. We'll be sitting on shows, a bunch of us, and we look at each other and we just giggle, and we're like, "Wow, we get paid for this." We'll still look at each other and smile and go, I can't believe we can laugh and have fun and mess around like we do, and still take home great paychecks and have a great time, and still feel like we're doing some really fun stuff and being creative, which is what everyone in that room wants to be able to do. It's just a gig that's a dream gig.
That yeah. Now, no, it really sounds awesome. Now, in the mid '90s, Dragon Ball Z came around. I mean, long story short, Harmony Gold lost the rights. Funimation got the rights. Did 13 episodes of Dragon Ball. That they skipped to Z because they wanted it to be more action packed. You came in, auditioned for Vegeta.
Yeah.
What was that process like? Did you audition for Barry Watson, or was it somebody else?
Yeah, I think Barry might have been up there for that, unless he was sent some original stuff. But I think Barry was there, and I know he was there for a ton of our early records. Yeah, he's a super fun guy. We for the original audition, I didn't know anything about this show, and I was really new to voiceover, really new to animation, and we get sent the breakdowns, and I still kind of remember the break. And a breakdown is just kind of there'll be here's what the series is about, and here's the characters we're looking to cast. And I can't even remember the other ones I read for as well, but I'm sure I read for a ton of the leads. There's a lot of male characters, obviously, in Dragon Ball Z,
Yeah.
and I probably read for quite a few of them. But because obviously initially I was Yajirobe as well, and played a few other characters that showed up, Pecan and a few different guys that showed up around the series early on. But with Vegeta, I think it just said all I knew was, I didn't even know if we had pictures of them. I don't think we did. I think it was just character descriptions, and it said that Vegeta's he's an alien, so he's not from Earth. So I don't even know what he looks like. I'm thinking
You're thinking like Ridley Scott, maybe type alien.
yeah, I don't even know. I don't even know. But then they said, okay, but he's a prince of this. He's a Saiyan prince from the planet Vegeta, and he is Prince Vegeta. I'm like, okay, so I'm thinking, but he's very diminutive, so he's not a big guy. Okay, so he's not a big guy. He's small. He's a prince. He's and he's got a bad attitude, like he's a bit of an egomaniac. So I just tried to think of something that, well, I don't want to give him, sort of a really big, deep. I didn't want to make him real big and sound huge, and I didn't want to make him too cartoony because he's a prince. But I wanted to give him sort of an attitude, but make his voice sound a little smaller. In the first couple episodes, it actually changed a bit. I think I deepened up a little bit after my first couple of episodes, but I started with just something I wanted, something small, and he had attitude, yet he could he was powerful, that people would listen to him, but it was small enough that it didn't sound like a huge guy, because there were so many other great big guys, and obviously with Nappa being his sidekick, that should be your big deep voice guy, and he should have sort of a little voice, but one that sounds like you'd listen to him and you don't mess with him. So that's just what I threw out there, and then you forget about it when you walk away. And call came in, yeah, you'll be playing the character Vegeta, and I didn't even know it was a big role. I didn't even know, is he in what? Is he in one episode or a couple of them? When you don't know a series and it's too early. There's no YouTube back then where you just look it up and see what that show is. There's no way to find anything. Now, I mean, obviously, if when a show shows up now that's going to get dubbed, and a bit of a background, you can go online right away and find a ton
Everything.
of everything before you even, this is what I'm auditioning for, and you find it all. Sometimes it might have been dubbed in 3 other languages already. It's been dubbed in Malaysian, and it's dubbed in French, and now they're doing it in English. So you can see the whole show, not in English yet, but you can see sort of the style. We couldn't see anything, so you have no idea what you're reading for, and it's all up to the casting people to make those decisions. And back then, man, it was the Wild West of starting out with dubbing that type of work. They were, flying by the seat of their pants too, trying to figure out how to put this stuff together. So it's not like those guys were a bunch of experts, even in casting this kind of stuff or how to put it together. But they certainly did a great job coming together with, they wouldn't have watched the whole series. They watch a bunch of episodes or a few of the early ones and decide who might fit these roles well. We didn't even get a chance to hear the original voices, so we weren't trying to match anything from the original Japanese. We were just given the character descriptions and what's your take on this, and they picked who they liked.
That's crazy. You went into it blind, essentially.
Totally, no idea
Wow.
what the show's about, what the characters look like, what it whether it's a lead. Like I didn't know anything, right? And then you show up, you're like, oh, he's this guy. Oh, he's that. You start to create the character as you're going. You'd really want to be able to know. It'd be great to know all 290 episodes right up front. What's the character arc? What happens? And find out a bunch of that. But sometimes it makes it even a little more real when you don't know what's coming, and you just sort of make a strong choice. And that's where your acting training comes in handy. Is make a choice, make it a strong choice, and stick to your guns. And if they like it, they'll take it. If they want to push you a certain direction, and Barry might have done that. He might have said, give me a couple of tips to go a certain way that he liked a scene to go. But I know he was all about the going off the rails with the screaming and stuff, because he directed us to just scream our lungs out off the top. So as much sort of full on just power screams and power attacks, he was loving that stuff.
And it's a huge draw of the show. You did have an edge, though, because it's interesting. When it was first airing in Japan, when the manga was being written, during the Vegeta saga, or as they called it when it came out, the Saiyan conflict, Toriyama didn't even specify he was the prince. That wasn't until the Namek arc, which is a retcon. He just called them the Saiyan Elite. So you knew he was a prince before even starting, which gave you the edge.
Well, I think I did. I'm pretty sure that that's my and it could be, I could not be recalling it wrong, but I remember him, and maybe it even said he was an elite leader, but I certainly remember, and maybe it's after you do this for so long.
Yeah, it's a blur.
Is it a blur that I'm thinking Prince? And you could be right. He might have just said he's an elite, powerful leader from this planet Vegeta, and his name is Vegeta. But I just remember, him. I remember for some reason the word Prince, and wanting to give him that sort of, a bit of a leadership quality around him that was more than just a sort of a military type leader, but more a do as I say kind of leader. Or I'll just kill you, right? It's a little bit more like Caesar than a Roman centurion, right?
Well, yeah, but it's interesting though, because I do think that you're right about it being a prince, because there's a line in the Japanese version where Nappa says they named Planet Vegeta after Vegeta because of how skilled he was, and that was not in either dub. So I'm pretty sure that was kind of them knowing ahead of time he's going to be a prince. Let's just kind of tweak it, which I think makes sense. It's a retcon, so why not put the seeds?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So you did VA work for Dragon Ball Z seasons 1 and 2 as Vegeta. That wrapped up, and then that was it for a couple years. We were all kind of waiting in bated breath after that big cliffhanger where when you portrayed Vegeta, you were wondering if Goku was a Super Saiyan. And that was it. That was it, episode 53 of the dub, 67 Japanese. Did you hear any rumblings back then? Do you remember about the rest of the series being dubbed? Or was it just, okay, we're done, we're moving on to the next thing? What was going on from your perspective back then?
Well, back then you're always working on other things, so you're kind of waiting for the call to come in for the next booking, and when you're working on a show, they'll just call you up. Okay, you're doing, if we need you for 4 hours of Dragon Ball Z this day, and you're working on that show and doing whatever it may be. But I remember we'd finished that bunch that we had done, and then I can't remember who I was talking to, or maybe Scott mentioned it or somebody, and he's like, "Did you hear?" He said, "I think they're moving like DBZ is going to get done in Dallas now." And I'm like, "What?" And I'm like, he said, "I don't know, maybe something with Barry who just wants to do it down there now, closer to home, or they're setting up a new shop down there, or the
save money,
save money." Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's money savings, not traveling up here, and the dollar maybe was an issue. And it's all stuff that we have no control over. We just show up and here's the scripts and dance monkey. We don't have all the behind the scenes information. So I was hoping it was going to stick around, because we were sure enjoying doing the show. And then we found out, they're doing it in Dallas now. It's gone. And we heard that they're just trying to cast guys that sort of voice match what we did. Which they did start off doing, and then they sort of drifted into their own styles and went back and redid that stuff. But they tried to find a cast that could kind of match sort of what we had started off doing, and I was like, ah, well, that's too bad. But you hear it's the biz, and you move on to more stuff. And then after a bit of time, we found out, oh, Dragon Ball Z is back. We are going to record the rest up here, and it's going to be for different broadcasters up here and in other markets. And we're back at it. And I'm like, oh, this was a couple years later, I think, and then there we went back and continued doing the series. So. And then I didn't know, what different markets it was going to. I just knew it wasn't the American market because the new dub was being done down there. So we moved on and continued to do it along with all our other projects, and that's all she wrote.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because the whole A-B group came in, and like you said, they asked you guys to come back, but the English dub at that point was already. I'm pretty sure when you guys started, if I remember correctly, and this is all based off of memory, the Boo Saga was just beginning to come out here with their Funimation cast. Why did they choose to bring you guys back? Obviously, the paycheck was nice, but why did they choose to bring you guys back when they already had another English dub? I never understood the reason behind that. Why there's two English dubs, essentially.
I have no idea, and that's just probably got to do with licensing, of something to do with behind the scenes and licensing and who owns what markets and where, I would imagine. And there must have been something to do with Ocean still somehow having a license to produce that show. And but behind the scenes, no clue how. I was like, why would there be two English dubs? It seems bizarre to me, but I think it just had to do with something behind the scenes that's legal that I know nothing about, and no one's informed me of the exact reason why. But it's obviously got something to do with a legal reason of licensing that they were allowed to. Otherwise, I'm sure Funimation could have put up a pretty big stink that said you can't produce another. Another version of English, but there might have already been an agreement in place. Who knows with YTV Canada or with some of the TV stations up here that already had an agreement to air it based with a license with Ocean. I don't know. It's I would
mystery.
Love to. Yeah, I would love to be a fly on the wall at that time when it all went down, and then when it came back, just to know how that came about, because that's pretty rare. Excuse me. There's not a lot of shows out there that have two English versions. There's different, original Studio Ghibli shows that were originally dubbed by kind of no name cast members or not big name English cast, and then they decide to redo it with a few bigger names, 10 years, 15 years down the road to get a theatrical release of it or something like that. But it's pretty rare.
Yeah, especially since it was so close to, it was running close, very, very close. And here's the other weird thing is that you guys got the exact same scripts that Funimation used. Virtually every line was exactly the same as the one they had already recorded. So I guess Funimation just said, hey, just take them and just emailed them over there. I'm guessing.
Well, you know what? I have no idea. I didn't even know that we had the exact same scripts.
Yeah.
That's news to me.
Yeah.
Have you seen all of the Canadian, the Ocean version?
I have seen it all. Yes, I was actually going to ask you about that, but go ahead.
No, I wasn't aware that they're the same. They're the identical scripts at all.
Yeah, the same scripts. Yeah, because the first time I picked up on it was in episode 122 when Vegeta says it's just super speed about the teleportation, the instant transmission move, which was not in the Japanese version. That was a change that was made for the Funimation version that I saw carried over to the Ocean dub, and I said, wait a minute. I started making comparisons, and it was like it's the same script. Now that actually, oh, go ahead.
Wow, that's cool. That's news to me, man.
Yeah, and that here's another question I have about that, and I don't know if you have an answer for this, but you have a much clearer viewpoint than I do. Do you know why they skipped the Frieza saga, Garlic Jr., and for those who don't know, I'll just explain to people who don't know. When the Ocean dub did the Ocean group, I guess, which to clarify, okay, the Ocean quote group is not a group of VAs like Brian here and Scott and Peter and all these guys. They're all contractors, but Ocean Studios is a studio in Vancouver that you guys happen to record at. So that's why it's called the Ocean dub or the Ocean group, right? Pretty much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so when the Ocean dub, I guess, of the Canadian dub of Dragon Ball Z restarted, they didn't pick up with the Raccoon Goku thing. You guys picked up with 122, which was when Trunks was talking to Goku, gave him the heart medicine, and all that stuff. It was episode 122. But they skipped the entire Frieza saga. Now, I had originally thought that the reason behind it, and this is all in my own head, was that Pauline Newstone had gotten like sick or something, and she couldn't do the role, or she was ill, or she left the group. I don't know. But do you happen? That's not true because she came back later to do the PyCon episode. So, is there any? Do you remember why they skipped that saga?
I don't know. So which episodes were not done that you haven't seen of the Ocean version?
They don't exist as far as I know. If they exist somewhere, you would be the only one to know. It would be episodes 68 to 121, which is the entire Frieza saga. Not the part that you guys did, but Goku fighting Frieza, the Captain Ginyu fighting Goku, the Garlic Jr. arc, and the first, it's weird, man, first 4 episodes of the Trunks mini arc, which is Trunks shows up, cuts Frieza in half, Frieza's dead. And that's why I thought it was Pauline, because they picked up right after Frieza was dead.
Weird. I have no idea, man. Zero idea why that chunk was jumped. And it's just one of those things where you'd love to be a fly on the wall and have the exact reason why, because when we come back, if you're not given the other scenes, or all the other, you don't, when we come back, as far as we're concerned, that's where you left off, right? Like, we weren't given it. We weren't said, oh, you missed a bunch in here, we're just skipping those. I think we knew that there were a few episodes and found out after the fact. Yeah. But it's actually quite a few that are missed out in there. So I don't know why we didn't do them. You'd have to, they'd have to be like an interview with the head honchos at Ocean, and between Ocean and Funimation, and say what happened, man, to get down to the bare bones of it and find out. But
it's just crazy because you were in there and you don't even know, and I figured you'd be the best source.
No, well, that's the thing. They have no.
They don't tell you anything.
Yeah, well, they have no legal reason why they have to tell us anything about what's going on behind the scenes of how of the negotiations that are taking place. They just have to sign the contracts and hire the performer, and you come in and do your gig, right? There's none of that info that we're all sitting in on making decisions together. If it was some Ocean group where we all decided those things, oh yeah, I'd probably have all that information. But no, we're not that's a different group making that decision. We're just we're the performers that are hired to come in and do the gigs, and that's the side we see. And then the whisperings of what happened here and where and why and whether they're factual or not, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I've been trying to figure it out myself. It's hard. A couple more questions here. I wanted to ask, or I wanted to just make the statement that the reason why I even was confused about that is because I wanted to see, because on the episodes you guys did not dub, one of them was Frieza kills Vegeta, and it's a very emotional moment. He's crying and talking about how Frieza essentially used him his whole life and lied to him, and I really wanted to hear your take on that scene. But it doesn't exist, and it is kind of a bummer. But you guys did come back. You guys did the rest of Dragon Ball Z from 122 all the way to the end. You guys did all of it. The Buu saga, the Cell saga, everything. But then here's where another weird one. Maybe you can answer this one. You guys did not come back for GT. They went to the Calgary studio, I think it was. It was in Calgary, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
What happened there? Was it a money thing? I mean, are you able to talk about it? I'm just curious.
Well, that's, I don't know exactly what the story is with that either. All I know is that I believe Ocean Studios has a number of different studio locations.
I think Westwood, right? Is that what it's called?
Well, Westwood was in Vancouver, but I'm not sure what the name of the one was that was working in Calgary. I actually don't know.
Okay.
If that was, but Westwood existed in Vancouver too. We did Gundam Wing at Westwood and a number of other shows there. But it's obviously business decisions. Like they had a number of different companies and different recording studios, and they wanted to operate another studio. And all I know that was that Calgary, they could do it They were working non-union out of Calgary, I believe. We were all union performers, so
Oh, yes.
we'd have to
Okay.
perform receive union rates on everything, which is a much higher line rate, and we're not paid by the hour. It's a line rate, and Walla is considered lines, like all the screams, all that kind of stuff. So it would be mostly my reason. I believe that they did it would be a money reason. It's savings to go and do it in Calgary. We heard about that and we're like, what? They're all the same characters. So many of the roles that we played have been doing in They're doing them in Calgary, and I don't know. It's upsetting to hear that kind of stuff, because I don't think sometimes everyone's aware of how deeply connected some of the fandom is to these characters and their voices. So to sort of bounce them around and change the voices all over the place, and sometimes I think it has to do with us. But as a union performer in the city, they could say, well, we want to do the show here in Vancouver, but we only want to pay $50 an hour now, and it's going to be non-union. We can't do it. I'm a union performer. I cannot work on non-union shows as much as I'd love to do. Continue
Yeah.
to have done Vegeta during that. Can't do it. It's not how a union works. And same with the move of Funimation to Dallas. That was all non-union work down there. Those weren't SAG actors or AFTRA actors. That was all non-union people getting paid hourly rates to do those that work, as opposed to session rates and line rates under the union dubbing agreement that we work on in Canada.
That actually makes the most sense. And I just checked. It's Blue Water Studios, not Westwood.
Yeah, Westwood was in Vancouver, and Blue Water
Yeah.
would have been, yeah, that would have been probably just another arm of the of the owners of Ocean having another studio somewhere else. And if it's a completely because Ocean Group is when you're a producer in town, you have to sign. Generally, you do sign off under an agreement to abide by the union rules and work with union performers. So Ocean Group wouldn't have been able to say, "Oh, we're going to do a non-union show now." They're not actually, probably, because they've signed off on a production agreement to not do that. They'd have to start another company somewhere else in order to use non-union performers, and that was where you would see. I would assume, and this is only my opinion, it could be wrong. Why you would start another company in a different province and do a show at a much lower rate than what it would have cost to do it at Ocean in Vancouver.
That makes the most sense. Yeah, it's just wacky that there's so many different people playing. Like, I did the math the other day. There's actually 16 different Goku voices for English, including kid and adult Goku, and
Wow.
that's crazy. And you went through 3 of them. You work with 3 of them.
Yeah, Goku voices early on. Yeah, there was only Ian Corlett briefly, and then early on in Peter Kalamis, and then it moved on to Kirby, and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's just crazy that there's so many. Now, recent stuff you've been working on here. You've been on My Little Pony. How's that? Like, what shows are the most fun for you to do right now? What projects are you having a great time with now?
Well, there's a lot of lots of
I
stuff.
know.
Yeah, boy, it's hard to think about all the different ones that are from My Little Pony is one I just do guest roles on once in a while, so it's not as full time as you might think when you work on some of those series. I'm working on a really fun show that's a Lego series called Lego Nexo Nights, and Dino Trucks, which is a DreamWorks show that's an original for Netflix, is a blast. A TV series called Mac and Moxie, and another PBS series called Ready Jet Go. I just did some more work on a preschool show called Kate and Mim Mim this morning. Tons of stuff, and then obviously MLP is out there, and some newer Max Steel stuff that was in town that we're working on, and Nerds and Monsters. We finished up a second season of that. Littlest Pet Shop was pretty busy for a while, so lots of stuff. Last year was the biggest year I've ever had in my career.
Wow.
Industry. It was, I think the amount of days I worked last year was incredible. It was just a super busy year, and it was a blast. It just flew by, and it was great. There was a lot going on. And when we don't have a strong Canadian dollar, that can be sometimes pretty good for us up here when the dollar's not too strong.
Right.
When so much of the work that we do, the prelay work, is based out of productions that come out of Hollywood and ideas that come out of Hollywood with whether it's DreamWorks or Disney or with the big toy companies, like Mattel and Hasbro, and they want to come up here and do work, and you can save 30 cents on the dollar by just doing some of your work a 2.5 hour flight away, same time zone. And we've got so many phenomenal studios in Vancouver that have been recording some of the best shows for 30 years, not to mention some great bands over the history of our time up here. And so we got great technicians, great studios, and a great group of performers that can work in the city and still sound like North American English legitimately, and not sound like you're from a foreign country, like Australian accented English or English or Scottish sound. You could still sound pretty American, which is what they want in most shows that are done prelay. They don't want you to sound too Canadian. You don't want to sound too Canadian, right? You're out and about and all that kind of stuff, eh? So you want to sound like an American, and we can do it pretty well on the west coast of Canada up here.
So but you normally, when you normally speak, you don't sound Canadian. I'm not sensing that.
No. I think it gets beaten out of us pretty early, but in West Coast Canada, it's not too bad for those of us that are working in the industry. If you go to East Coast Canada,
like Quebec.
Well, Quebec is a French accent, but East Coast more like Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, Newfoundland. You get some accents over there that have very Irish influences and French influences, and they can really make the language have a very different sound. Just like when you get up into Maine and Minnesota,
right?
Areas like in the U.S., you might think, an American accent, but someone from Minnesota, right? They have a very different sound, and they can sound very Canadian. But we have to work on making sure we do our best to keep the outs and abouts sounding more out and about, and then it all works in our favor.
more American, right?
More American, yeah, American. Yeah, that's right.
All right, I'm going to hit you with the one that I'm sure everybody's wondering about. All right, so let's go to it. Dragon Ball is making a big comeback. Now, unfortunately, the Ocean Group didn't get to go back and do the movies, and there's a lot of great Vegeta moments in the movies I wish you would have covered, but we've been hearing mumblings about the Dragon Ball Kai Ocean dub. All right, I've been hearing about this now for 3 years. Can you tell us if it's real or not?
It is real. I have no idea when it's going to come out. I actually just talked with a production coordinator there recently, and I said, can I get asked this all the time?
Yes.
When will it be released? Are they doing a DVD set? What the heck is happening to it? And she says, I still can't say exactly where it's going. I will let you know as soon as I know. She said, you can tell anybody who asks, you are Vegeta in it. And I was Vegeta in it. And
you already did it. It's done.
It's done. Yeah, it's done. It's been done for a while. It's been done for quite some time. So I have no idea when it's going to come out, but we're done. Yeah.
Even the Boo Saga, because last time I checked, Scott had said in an interview that no Boo Saga yet of Kai.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't think so. I can't remember how many we did.
Yeah, it's called the Final Chapters, is what they're calling it. Funimation doesn't even have it out yet.
No, we have not that. So I can't even remember how many of them we did. How many's in the Kai series that Funimation did?
I believe 98 episodes. Yeah, lot
90
less.
Episodes.
Yeah, 98.
I think that's probably about what we did. But yeah, we did them.
Now, when you went back in the studio to do Vegeta, now, okay, this is the interesting part, okay, because we haven't heard it yet, but it's been so many years since you did Vegeta, and it's different industry now, because back when you started, and I always say this to people because we have a lot of young folks, they don't know what really went on back then, and I know enough, but I certainly wasn't in the business like you were. Obviously in the mid-90s with anime, all animation, but specifically anime, because of how Japan is, tons of censorship. There were, Dragon Ball Z that you worked on was originally 67 episodes, got cut down to 53 because of the censorship. Lots of cutting stuff out, lots of, music score changes and things like that. Of course, the purists didn't like it. But now with Kai, okay, Funimation approached it from a much more adult, mature, let's stick to the Japanese, let's stick to how it's supposed to be. Was that the same with when you guys did it? Was it real? Is this going to be like Brian playing Vegeta, uncut, unfiltered, badass, yeah, I don't know.
Well, I haven't seen the Funimation Kai version, so and I only ever see the dialogue that I do, so I've never seen everything put together and whether they edited stuff out or kept things in. So I don't know what's going to be in the final edit. I only, I know that what we did was felt like some great stuff. I felt like my voice was more centered to where that character probably could be. I don't feel like when I did it that I might have pushed myself, excuse me, as much as I did early on with some of the power-ups and screams and stuff, because back then I only had a couple shows I was working on, but as they brought us back to do this batch, I was on a pile of other shows, so I just could not go in there and rip my guts out in the same way as before. But it was still a blast to do. We still killed it with as much as we could, and but I haven't seen it put together, so I don't know what's been what's been edited out, what's still in, whether they've colored over blood and made it brown to look like dirt. I don't know.
They did that before, but I mean with Kai, the way that Funimation approached it was much more like, or to the original, I want to ask you about that before we get out of here. How do you feel about that, about how the evolution of the anime industry now is different? Because now I feel like most companies are trying to stick towards as close as they can to the original Japanese, whereas in the 90s, not just with Dragon Ball, but Sailor Moon, a lot of the shows had a lot of stuff cut out because of censorship. How do you feel about that?
Well, I love now that it's less censored, because it's I completely understand why it had to be before, because there initially in the early and mid 90s there weren't the platforms available that there are to air the product on now. Like now with Netflix, I mean, even Death Note's on Netflix now, and some of the shows, I mean, they just didn't have the platforms and the different cable networks and and even times, the times that they would play, like the detour hour of shows and play stuff at a different time that was sort of the uncensored version of anime. That stuff didn't exist for people to find that, or even YouTube, where you can just upload stuff and see the original content. So there's so many more options for what a producer can do with the product. I would want to get it full on from the beginning, and then if you have to edit for a certain broadcaster, fine, you have an edited version, but you also have the unedited version that can go straight to Netflix, because Netflix is like, yeah, do whatever you want. you can load it up there full on, right, and not worry about it. So I much prefer sticking to how a show was originally presented, by far, and would have loved to have been able to do that originally with Dragon Ball. It would have been just a blast to do that. To tell someone we're going to blast them to hell instead of into another dimension. It would have just been so much fun.
Yeah, the infamous Home for Infinite Losers. So I love all that stuff, though. I'm very nostalgic towards that era, and I own the original Ocean dub, all of it pretty much. Both the box sets and the ones that were taped off TV, which the quality is not the best because they were taped off TV, but still, yeah, it's fun to watch.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So anything you want to plug before we get out of here? Anything that you want to say to anybody? Any projects you want people to check out? Any social media? Your floor is yours.
Wow. Social media plug. I'm just not one of those super plug this, plug that kind of guy. But I tell you what I am is I'm so appreciative of the fandom in this industry. I don't get out to a ton of animation cons. But when I get a chance to, it's just so exciting to meet the fans. I'd been to one of the first ones I'd been at in a while, just because I'm too busy usually to take up a whole weekend screaming my guts out for people and losing my voice. But I was at Anime North for their 20th anniversary this past May, and 40,000 people there. It was just crazy, the amount of people that still just love all the stuff that we did back in the day, and even the stuff that we're still doing, and some of the newer things. I wish we had a chance to do more of it. I'll have to say I'm not able to do as much anime as I was in the past, being booked on a lot of other stuff. But it sure is fun to get a chance to actually sort of cut your teeth on that kind of work, because it's so difficult compared to prelay, and you really learn how to hone your skills on a microphone, how to hone your skills as an actor, how to come up with so many different ideas when you get to do that stuff. I looked forward to it every time I got a chance to do it. Now, if I had to do too much Vegeta right now, I'd probably be rolling my eyes, going, "Oh, damn it! I got another Vegeta session. I better pack some lozenges in a bucket of water to guzzle down, because it's
Yeah.
it's so crazy on a performer." But man, back in the day, it was just so fun. But just a shout out to all the fans that listen to this and that to come out to all the cons. We honestly, and every performer that I work with up here, they so appreciate the chance to chat to some of the folks when we get out there and see them at events, and just getting the letters and emails and the Twitter followers. Brian Drummond VO is my Twitter handle, and I try to get back to as many people as I can when people throw shout outs to me on Twitter, and it's been a blast. I'm telling you, I'm hope to do a lot more while the old larynx still holds together. And there is a lot of exciting stuff coming down the pipe. Not as much from me in the name of anime. A few here and there. I'm still working on some shows, but lots of other great projects that everyone that's an expert like you are, that can pick my voice out of a crowd and go, "Oh, there's Drummond in there, squeezing in there to make a buck."
Right. Well, I hate to sound selfish, man, but fingers crossed that the final chapters of Kai get licensed to you guys so you can finish it. I know you don't. Your voice is gonna be destroyed because you got to do Majin Vegeta again, and he's quite angry during that whole sequence.
Very,
Yeah.
he is. Yes, absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. They haven't told us about it yet, but all I know is yes, we did do that first round, and I'd love to see when it comes out. There'll be some surprises for people with some of the voices are, and there'll be some old favorites that people are excited to hear again. So,
And I also can't wait, if again, fingers crossed, if everything gets licensed or whatever, for you to come back and do Super, if it's going to happen, with the Resurrection F movie or arc, because there's some great Vegeta stuff, great interactions with Vegeta and Frieza that I would love to hear your take on in that film. The climax of that movie is Vegeta and Frieza, and I would just love to hear it.
cool. Well, maybe one day we'll just have to figure out how to. If it never gets done, we'll just find a way to dub it anyhow and get it out there for the fans.
I might be able to arrange that.
Well, hey, yeah, we'll figure out a flight to Florida, and we'll make it happen.
Oh, I appreciate that, man. Well, look, thank you so much, and thanks everybody for listening. Check out Brian on Twitter and, of course, all his projects. And thank you again. And hey, take care of yourself and each other.